Morning, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of To The Point podcast. Hope everybody's doing well on this beautiful Thursday as we we're close to wrapping up the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs as three of the four series have concluded with the Montreal Canadiens, the Tampa Bay Lightning, and last night the New York Islanders advancing to the conference finals with just one series remaining. That could end tonight with the Colorado Avalanche on their face facing the Vegas Golden Knights live in Vegas. It'll be a 10 o'clock start. We'll dive into that today. We're going to talk about the New York Islanders, just how they're doing it. Back-to-back years, conference finals. This team, which, looking at them as a whole, they're not full of skill. They're full of grit, grind. They don't, Matt Barzal, he's a superstar, but they don't really let him be a superstar. And I'll get into that, but just credit to the New York Islanders for doing, what they've done so far, and just really incredible. Also today we'll talk about some NBA, the playoffs into the second round. Really impressive game last night from Chris Paul, CP3, 15 assists, and I would say he's the remaining in the playoffs. I think he's the most hungry to win a championship. The guy's 36 years old. He's bounced around. He's been to a few different conference finals, never made it to an NBA finals. Hoping this is the year that he can get there. With the Phoenix Suns team, they're young, but they're up 2-0 on Denver. They've been one of the best teams all year, and they have balance. They're a balanced team, balanced scoring. Last night, the leading score was 18 points in an NBA game, and you still win by over 20 points. So they're really impressive. We'll get into the French Open as well. Start previewing the semifinals of the women and men's tournament. The women's draw really interesting with four women that have never been to a semifinal before. So obviously they've never won a Grand Slam. So we're guaranteed to see a new champion. On the other side, the men, we got two men in a semifinal, never been to a semifinal here at the French. Zverev has been to a major final at the U.S. Open last year. Stefanos Tsitsipas has never made it to a semifinal. And we got, Rafael Nadal and Novak Djokovic, who are going to square off tomorrow for the right to play in the final. Nadal seeking his 14th French Open title. Djokovic seeking his second, and he's never beaten Nadal in Paris. So obviously looking to slay the giant and, reclaim some credibility, because Djokovic only won one French Open title in his career, and he needed somebody to beat Nadal on the way to get there. So we'll see if he can do that tomorrow. We'll get into that and everything else in the world of sports. Lots happening. Golf tournament this weekend with the U.S. Open a week from today, live from Torrey Pines. So a lot of interesting things happening and a lot to get into today. But as I said, we're going to start with the New York Islanders. This team, they just find a way to win. You look on paper, the Boston Bruins are a much better team than the New York Islanders. Now, there's a problem with looking at a team on paper. I think if you look so far in these playoffs, the Pittsburgh Penguins, on paper, they got Sidney Crosby. They've got Evgeny Malkin. They got Chris Letang. It's pretty good on paper. You look at the Washington Capitals, they got Nick Backstrom, TJ Oshie, Alex Ovechkin. They have a lot of players just brand. Well, this is a pretty good team. Then you look at, Boston, David Pastrnak, who is a superstar. There are players in this league that are labeled superstars that aren't. He's not one of them. This guy's a 40-goal scorer, but he also can get 100 points in a season because he's a great passer as well. He's not a one-dimensional player. You got Brad Marchand, who, he's risen into that MVP every year type debate. Is Brad Marchand going to be nominated for the Hart? Is he going to be nominated for the Ted Lindsay? This guy does it every year. And when it comes to in the playoffs, the guy's just clutch. He's money. And you can't undersell that. And you got Patrice Bergeron, who's, just got nominated for his 10th straight Selke. 10 straight. That's hard to do. And he continues to do it. And obviously you got Tuukka Rask in net, who's made over 100 career starts. He's been to 2 Stanley Cup finals as a starting goalie. And he's, got some pedigree. And then you look at the other side and you're like, well, Yeah, Brock Nelson's a good player. Josh Bailey, good player. Obviously, Matt Barzal is a very skilled guy. Semyon Varlamov, mixed bag career. Really an awful start in Washington. Got sent out of town, turned it around slightly in Colorado, and then comes to the island where he's had the most success in his career. But it's not even close. But the series was just built on capitalizing on opportunities. And we saw that in game 5, where the New York Islanders went 3 for 3 on the power play. They just capitalized on opportunities. And the Bruins, they controlled possession. They had offensive zone time, but Varlamov was great. And they weathered the storm. They would go 5 minutes without getting a shot. They get possession in the Boston zone. They'd score. It happens for them. They score at the end of periods. They deflate momentum, and that's not what this team does. Another thing the New York Islanders do so effectively is wear down defensemen. I think we saw it through last night. Charlie McAvoy was beat up. Every time they dumped the puck, they dumped it in his corner, and he took a pound of flesh every time. Cal Clutterbuck, Matt Martin, Cizikas, Nelson. These guys are big, big boys, and they are going to come to hit you. And just on the grand scheme, something that if you're watching hockey and a big takeaway you need to still pull out of this, big teams still win in the playoffs. These GMs that want to build these little teams with all skilled players, it doesn't work. Because Charlie McAvoy, he's a big boy. Guess what? He's dinged. He's beat up. Brandon Carlo's a big, strong man. He was injured, couldn't finish the series. Patrice Bergeron was likely injured. I don't think he played very well in the series. Pierre-Luc Dubois, he's obviously for the Winnipeg Jets, but there's rumors that he was injured. These are big guys, and they're getting injured. If you have these small 5'7", 5'8" forwards, and you expect them to go get you 16 wins, and your team's just based on that, you're not gonna win. And for the Islanders in the game last night in particular, it was just about turnovers. Boston was sloppy with the puck, and the Islanders took advantage. On the second goal, Grzelcyk's got the puck at his own blue line. Brock Nelson strips him, goes in on a breakaway, beats Tuukka Rask under the glove. And then we see later he gets the third goal of the game. Beautiful, slides it under Rask again, makes it 3-1. Brock Nelson, not a household name. If you know hockey, yeah, you've heard the name Brock Nelson. But 2 closeout games this year. Game 6 against the Pittsburgh Penguins, Brock Nelson, 2 goals. Game 6, closeout game against the Boston Bruins last night, 2 goals. He's got 7 goals in the playoffs. 4 of them have come in elimination games. That's just a clutch performance. That's how you get it done in the playoffs. Josh Bailey assisting on both of those goals, the longest serving New York Islander. One of the key leaders of this team, especially with Anders Lee, their captain, out of the lineup. Bailey is really their de facto leader. And then, you get a 4-1 lead. They allow a couple of power play goals last night, both to Brad Marchand. But in the third period, what does a team do when you want to finish a team off? You just hold them back. And what did Barry Trotz do? He basically did the Guy Boucher special back in the day with the Tampa Bay Lightning, where they played the trap. They allowed Boston 4 shots in the third period, and they had 2 of them in the last 2 minutes. So the first 18 minutes of that period, Boston had 2 shots on goal. 1 of them went in. But, in that, from the 3-minute mark to a minute 45, the Islanders had the puck below the below the goal line in the Boston zone. It was Cizikas, then Clutterbuck, then Nelson, then Martin. They just kept flipping the puck to each other, killing the clock, and Boston couldn't get control. And eventually when they did, they got a whistle. They called a timeout, and Ryan Pulock scored an empty net goal. And that was it. They added 2 empty net goals to their credit, and they win the game 6-2. But again, this team just finds a way to win. And it's a lot of cast-offs. Yeah, it's kind of been the theme this year. I mentioned through on the podcast, just, Florida and, how they had a great year with a bunch of cast-offs. Carolina had a bunch of cast-offs. The Islanders have a bunch too. Matt Martin played in Toronto. The guy couldn't play. So they say. They said, oh, Matt Martin, he's ineffective. We can't wait till his contract's up. This guy can't do anything right. The Islanders say, come back home, Matt. We think you can play. We got this guy named Cal Clutterbuck who hits everything that moves. Zizekas, who's just a tough-ass guy. We're going to put you on a line with them, and you're going to go up against some of the best lines in hockey. Do you think you want to do that? Well, sure. I mean, if you're going to pay me and you think I can play. He gets there. They have become one of the most important lines in the NHL. Are they going to put up many points? Nope. But are they effective? You're damn right. They've shut down Crosby twice in the playoffs. This is Sidney Crosby, one of the best players in the history of the league. They've made him look below average. And I'm being nice. This series, I was upset with Barry Trotz that he did not put them against the perfection line. Marchand, Pasternak, and Bergeron. I wanted that matchup. To Barry's credit, he wins the series. But, it would have given more offensive zone time, more time for Jean-Gabriel Pageau and that line to score offensively. He had a tough assignment that it's hard for anybody to win that matchup. Say, okay, you're going to go up against Pasternak, Bergeron, Marchand. Yeah, win that throughout the whole series. And it takes away your offensive zone time because you have to deal with 88 and 63 coming at you in waves. But Martin, Zizekas, Clutterbuck scored the first empty net goal last night, but Martin didn't get a goal in the series. Zizekas got an OT winner, which is pretty cool. But this line had 2 goals combined, but their impact was so profound because they wore down people. Clutterbuck had a clean check and he knocked Carlo out of the series. And just hearing from former players and talking to family members that played pro, when you're in a series, you're not trying to hurt anybody per se. You're not trying to injure them long term, a big concussion or impact their life. But if you can hit a guy and it makes him a little hurt, like just if he feels it and it's wearing him down and it's a nagging thing and he can't play to his full ability, that's what you're trying to do. And that's what Clutterbuck, Komarov, that's what these guys do. And I mentioned yesterday on with Craig on Under Review, Anthony Beauvillier is a shining star of these playoffs. Every year there's a guy that kind of steps up that you don't expect. I think back to Ottawa, the current Islander, Jean-Gabriel Pageau. He had a 5-goal game against the New York Rangers in Game 1 of the second round. He was a shining star. He was a third-line center to that point, but there's just guys in playoffs that step up. Braden Point, he was a good player before last season, don't get me wrong, but last year elevated him to another level when it comes to who is this guy as a player. Braden Point became something more. He became, Braden Point, the clutch guy that scores big goals. He's a playoff performer. For me, for the New York Islanders, he's through all the teams, I got him at number 1. It's Anthony Beauvillier. This guy just is a creative guy. He's got some jam, and he's just a guy that finds a way to get on the score sheet. And it might be an assist. We saw the goal in Game 5 where he's in the corner. He's getting hounded by the puck, and he throws it out front, a no-look pass to Brock Nelson. Nelson taps it to Josh Bailey. It's in the back of the net. But he scores goals. He turns pucks over. He's so aggressive in the neutral zone, attacking the forwards. And, we've seen him get involved with Charlie McAvoy in this series. He's not afraid to mix it up. I'm not saying he's going to drop the gloves, but he's going to hit you. He'll get into scrums after the whistle. This guy's just a complete package when it comes to a playoff performer. And he's a guy that's made a difference. Matt Barzal, obviously he's a superstar. Everybody knows that. But he's on a line with Jordan Eberle and Leo Komarov. Leo Komarov, I love him, but the guy can't score a goal to save his life, and you're on a line with the best player on your team. I mean, that's got to be frustrating at the back of Barzal's mind. He's got to be like, can I play with Paul Mary? Like, could I? Could I play with Nelson or Josh Bailey? But to Barry Trotz's credit, he doesn't break that up, and they still find a way to win. And, throughout the 2 rounds, you got to give Lou Lamoriello credit. He was aggressive at the trade deadline, and he went back to the well, his New Jersey days, and he acquired Kyle Palmieri and Travis Zajac. And, Zajac to me was a guy that's really over the hill, doesn't have a lot left in the tank. He wasn't playing in the first round until rookie Oliver Wahlstrom was injured. But Palmieri, I'm like, yeah, he could work. He kind of fits the New York Islanders mold. Well, through 12 games of the Stanley Cup playoffs, winning both series in 6, Kyle Palmieri has 7 goals. What more could you have asked from Kyle Palmieri? He's fit in beautifully. First playoff game he played against Pittsburgh, gets the opening goal of the playoffs, then scores an OT winner. Last night scores a goal in Game 6, a closeout game. And, to his credit, Travis Zajac scores the first goal of the game last night. They're just finding contributions. They acquired Andy Green. He's played every playoff game since he's arrived in the Island the last 2 years. Noah Dobson, he's had his struggles. In Game 5, I really think he did not play well. Third period, I think he might have got 2 shifts in Game 5. Last night, he played better. He got an assist on Zajac's goal. He looks more confident with the puck, and he's still a kid. He's going to go through his growing pains, but I give him a ton of credit for what he's going through. And, the Islanders, again, at their back end position, they don't have a stud. Pollock, Mayfield, Pelech, Green, these guys aren't household names. They're not superstars, but they all work well together. And I think Pollock's really good. I think if he was playing in another market, I think he'd get more praise. But they just work well together. They gel, and they just find a way to win. And it's really impressive what they've done there in Long Island. And looking at this matchup, I think also winning this series and getting to another conference final for back-to-back seasons, I think this guaranteed Barry Trotz the head coaching job for Team Canada at the Olympics in 2022. I believe he'll be the head coach. I could be wrong. Maybe they give it to somebody. Maybe they give it to John Cooper. If he wins another cup this year, it's hard to say, well, we're not going to give it to John Cooper. He's won back-to-back Stanley Cups. He's beaten Barry Trotz twice head-to-head. But you look at it, Barry won a cup in 2018. First year with the Islanders, gets to a second round. Second year with the Islanders, gets to a conference final. Now in his third season, he's back to another conference final. This guy is doing more with less than anybody in the NHL. And it's hard for them not to give Barry the job. Bruce Cassidy, I think, will be on the bench. He's a good head coach for the Boston Bruins, obviously getting to a Stanley Cup final in 2019. But I just look at Barry Trotz, and I think he's the best coach in the NHL. I think John Cooper's really good too, but John Cooper's got, a bunch of studs just waiting there. Kucherov and Stamkos and Pointon. We can go through them all. But for what he's done with this team, I think he's going to be able to build a roster and play a style. And not everybody's going to have to, be a superstar, but he's clearly found guys that are willing to accept the role. I'm sure there's days Matt Barzal is not super happy with his role and with his line mates, but he's bought in. You don't hear him complaining about it. And at least in the media, publicly, he's not complaining about it. Maybe he's talking to Barry about it, but you don't hear it. And you got to give some credence to that, because there's guys on that team that are first liners right now that'll be on a fourth line playing 8 minutes. And I think Barry's going to have a good sense of who's able to adapt to that and who isn't, and say, well, on paper, this guy's maybe better than so-and-so, but he's not going to be on my team. He's not going to accept that role. Even for a 2-week tournament, he's going to bitch and complain. I don't want to hear it. I'll have another guy who's going to come in, play that role, do it effectively, and take pride in that role, and he'll be on the team. That I just think there's a lot of value in that, and his resume speaks for itself when it comes to. He's one of the best coaches in history of the league. He's got one cup. You could argue he should have more, but he's maybe he gets another one this year with the Islanders, and that would be really impressive if he could do that. Now, looking at the opposite, the losing side of this coin, the Boston Bruins, 2019 Stanley Cup Final, Game 7, obviously on home ice. Yeah, you have St. Louis on the ropes, and you don't really show up to play. You're down 4-0 after the first period in that game. And that was a heartbreaker. Brad Marchand, Bergeron, Pastrnak, that one hit hard after a great playoff run for them to get there. But you get over that. Then you get to last season, and Pasternak's having a great year. He wins co-Rocket Richard with Alex Ovechkin. But then comes the pandemic, and it slows everything down. Boston was gonna win that division by a sizable margin, including ahead of Tampa Bay. But they get back on the ice, they play, win the first round over Carolina, but then fall to the Tampa Bay Lightning in the second round in 5 games. And a year later, they do one better. They get to a 6-game series, but it's the same result. They're out in the second round again. And I look at this team, and I see a few problems. They obviously have one of the best lines in hockey, and that's not going to change for a while. Brad Marchand's still an elite hockey player. David Pastrnak, if you listen to this podcast, you know what I think of him. The guy's a stud. He's actually brings personality to the game too, which I appreciate. And he's a superstar, better than some other guys in bigger markets. Then you go through the rest of their lineup. Jake DeBrusk, it hasn't worked all year for him. He's been in and out, healthy scratch, inconsistent player. Now, I think Boston will likely move on from him. And I'm not saying that's a counterproductive move, but I could see Jake DeBrusk going to another team and being a really successful hockey player, because it's just finding whatever it is, the ambition, the prod to poke him in the ass, to have consistent work ethic, and just don't make stupid mistakes with the puck. Don't make stupid mistakes with penalties, because the guy's a perfect playoff guy. I think we saw last year, or 2 years ago, against the Toronto Maple Leafs when he drew Nazem Kadri into that suspension. That was from being an irritant. He could be an irritant and still score goals. I think this guy can be a 25-goal scorer in the NHL. That comes at a premium. Not everybody can do that. So, that didn't work. Then you look at their defense. That was my problem from day one. Now, if they have Zdeno Chara, did they win the series? No, probably not. But would it have hurt? It's about depth. I'd rather play Zdeno Chara than Jared Tenorti. That's just me. And Jared Tenorti is a lot younger, but I'd still rather play Z, because I know what Z's going to bring. Connor Clifton, he's a nice little player, but again, he's not what you need at this time of year. That's not it. It's just not. It's not what I want on my team. Carlo's great, but injury prone, and you don't. If you have injuries, they didn't have depth to overcome it, and I see that as their big problem. Their defense, it just wasn't good enough, and this team's trying to grow mid-season, trying to promote, develop players. Well, you're in a Stanley Cup window. You go out and acquire talent on the back end. You did go out and acquire Taylor Hall. Good on you. You got Mike Riley. But again, Mike Riley's a 4 or 5 defenseman. 4 or 6 defenseman. There's days where he's not very good. And you need to do more. Mike Riley, as your big deadline D acquisition, is just not good enough. And you could have done more for the Boston. I look at it at Don Sweeney and say, you definitely could have done more. Now, does Bruce Cassidy deserve some of the blame? Sure. Sean Corrali, Chris Wagner, they were taking dumb penalties in Game 5, and they played, and they played in Game 6, and he rode with the guys that the veterans that got him to the Stanley Cup final in 2019. Could Trent Frederick have drawn in? Sure. Kuhlman drew in late. I don't see that as the big problem. I see defense as their biggest issue. And because I don't particularly like this player, I'm going to prod at him again. Tuukka Rask. He's 34. He's an unrestricted free agent, so maybe he retires. Who knows with him? I wouldn't trust anything he says. But when you're on the ice, you're 100%. I've heard athletes say that forever. You can be injured. Well, if you're injured, go sit in the press box. It's not an excuse. When you're on the ice, I don't give a crap if you got a broken arm. Don't dress. And Tuukka Rask leaves game 5 because he was not 100%. Then he comes back last night, wasn't very good. And now it's not Tuukka Rask's fault. No, Tuukka Rask is this and that. And I've never seen a fan base kiss somebody's ass who gave up on their team a year ago. And I get it. I'm not a guy. Just to recap, in the bubble last year, they win the first round. Then they're going to start the second round series against Tampa. I think that would have been a really tight series. Boston was a great team. So was Tampa. Tuukka Rask says, no, I got to go. I'm checking out of the bubble. I got to go back to Boston. I got a family matter to attend to. Okay. And there's never any explanation. There was in the offseason that his kid had a problem, but it was not a serious medical issue. It wasn't like one of his kids had cancer or had a car accident. That, of course, you can accept. He left because he did not want to be there. And I think he used the excuse of his kid being ill or something like that as a crux to get out of there. And I have a problem with that. That's quitting on your team. And, this is an example I think of. When my parents went down south for a trip for a week, if I got an inner ear infection, they weren't flying home because I got an inner ear infection. They were staying down there, having drinks, having a good time. Who gives a shit about my ear? Get the babysitter, get some antibiotics, and, grow the fuck up, Noah. Feel better. That's Tuukka Rask. You're on a business trip. Okay, yeah, your kid's got a stubbed toe. Well, throw some fucking aloe in that bitch and let's get it going. And for him, inconsistent playoffs, hurt. Again, the guy's he's about as strong-minded, his mind is so weak. And I don't like that what he did last year. I'm going to have a negative mindset on him for the rest of his career. But he's 34. Does he return to Boston? And what kind of money is he going to want? It's tough to give a 34-year-old goaltender big money and term. You got Jeremy Swayman, who's coming up. He looks like a good young goaltender, but again, he's played a cup of coffee in the NHL. I'm reading on Twitter last night, Rask is hurt, Swayman should have started. No, you do not start Jeremy Swayman in a game 6. He's never started a playoff game. And you say, okay, yeah, go in there and play. No, that's wrong. You ride with the guy that's been to 2 Stanley Cup finals, to his credit, and you see where it takes you. They're losing last night with or without Swayman being the starting goalie. The New York Islanders just outplayed the Boston Bruins. They were better at capitalizing on opportunities than the Boston Bruins throughout the series, especially in the last 4 games. So Boston's got some decisions. Do they bring Taylor Hall back? I think he had a very good first round. Second round of the playoffs, he was kind of a no-show. He had an empty net goal and an assist in 6 games. And David Krejci, the best thing he did in the series was not get a spearing major, putting it between the legs of Matt Barzal. That's basically what I saw in the series from him when it comes to impact. Put his stick right up the Kaniki of Matt Barzal, and that was it. Other than that, he's another guy. He's an unrestricted free agent. I wouldn't re-sign him. He's over the hill. And, I think the Boston Bruins are a smarter organization than others when it comes to just signing guys because they've been there for a long time. You got to appreciate your veterans. Don't get me wrong. You're great players of your of your history. Krejci, yeah, he's there. Boston's got a lot of good players, but just Chara per se and Rask. If you can still play, bring them back. But if guys you're seeing a decline, and it's just because they're a legend there, that doesn't mean you have to bring them back. Marlowe and Thornton and San Jose, I think it's hurt their team for years that they keep bringing back these old goats that can't play anymore. Lowercase goat. That's what they become, a scapegoat, because they're no good. And you're just like, well, Thornton, Marlowe, they're old. Then get a younger body in there. San Jose, I hate that, what they did. Anaheim made a tough decision. They say we're moving on from Corey Perry. Maybe that was a negative move, but at least they stuck to it. I give them credit for that. And sometimes it's just about moving on, getting fresh blood. And for the Bruins, your window's closing. Getting a younger, more vibrant player to fit in a role is a better solution right now than bringing back a Krejci or bringing back a potentially a Tuukka Rask if you have a better option. Now, if Tuukka Rask is available and he wants to come back, then yeah, I would probably re-sign him if the number fits what you can handle. If not, go to the free agent market and bring in a goaltender, because maybe you can have a mentally strong guy that you know is going to be there when you need him the most. With Tuukka Rask, you don't have that assurance. And if you think you have that assurance, I think you're out to lunch. So we'll see what happens there in Boston. But obviously they got a lot of decisions to make, and their organization is heading in a direction that's going to be on the downtick here sooner rather than later, because they've been so successful for the past decade, making the playoffs, going on runs, 3 Stanley Cup finals from 2010 to 2020. And eventually that's going to end because your players get older, the attrition, the amount of hockey these guys have played. So we'll see where it takes Boston, but they've been through a lot. But credit to the New York Islanders. They're going to be playing the Tampa Bay Lightning for the second straight year in a conference final. We'll preview that as we get close to the series. The NHL has not announced when that series will start yet. Vegas and Colorado play tonight. So if that series ends, I suspect it'll start Saturday. If not, obviously it'd be Vegas, Colorado game 7 Saturday night. So that would probably mean a Sunday start for Islanders Tampa, or they may even push that to Monday just to get a fresh start. But maybe this weekend we see game 1 of a conference final, or Saturday night we could see a game 7 at the very least. Last series remaining in the Stanley Cup playoffs for the second round is Colorado Vegas, and it was obviously Colorado up to a 2-0 series lead after 2 games. It looked like they were going to win the series quite easily, but Vegas has bounced back, and they just have found a way to neutralize Nathan MacKinnon. And you look at their defense; it's really the best part of their team. Marc-Andre Fleury is fantastic. I'll put him as a part of that defense. But Alex Pietrangelo, Shea Theodore, Alec Martinez, Zach Whitecloud has really stepped up, had a strong playoff. These guys just play good defensively. Braden McNabb, he's just nasty. There's nothing nice about Braden McNabb, but he brings it night in, night out. And Vegas has just neutralized. They take away the middle of the ice. We see McKinnon try to throw passes cross ice. They get broken up, and it's out of the zone. It's quick exits. And Colorado played better through 40 minutes in game 5. I'm like, they're going to win this game, especially when Donskoy scored the second goal of the game to make it 2-0. But you start the third period, and Vegas scores 2 goals in 4 minutes, and it's tied. And then 50 seconds into overtime, Mark Stone gets the winner to end the game. And it's just, wow. Colorado loses on home ice in a pivotal game 5, in my opinion. And just the way Vegas has played, I don't see how Colorado can win. I think it's over tonight. The Vegas Golden Knights will move on and advance to the conference final tonight, in my opinion. And, start to prep for the Montreal Canadiens, who are awaiting their opponent. But in the playoffs, guys, I mentioned Beauvillier, Jonathan Marchessault, Riley Smith, William Karlsson didn't have great regular seasons, and their teams kind of made it known. You guys weren't that great. So far this postseason, they've been a fantastic line. They've been in the 2018 version when they went to their Stanley Cup final. Marchessault's got 6 goals. William Karlsson racking up the assists, 7 assists in this series. Riley Smith chipping in when he can. And then really the big X factor for this team is Max Pacioretty. And he's a guy that's been kicked around. In Montreal, he was condemned because he was not a great captain and, yada, yada, yada. And he comes to Vegas. He's in the perfect spot because he's on the line with Mark Stone, who's going to be the leader above him. Max Pacioretty, whenever we looked at for leadership, when Mark Stone's around, when a guy like Alex Pietrangelo is around, a captain for many years in St. Louis, he can just be a goal scorer and be a great player. And in my opinion, he's their most important forward because every night he's a threat to score. He's got the best shot on the team. He creates a threat where they're like, oh, well, Patch has got the puck. We got to, 2D come over and try to contain him. And that leaves a guy on the other side wide open for a tap-in winner. And he, when they missed him through the first 6 games of the opening round, and games 4 and 5, they couldn't score. He comes back in game 7. He scores a goal his first game back. That's just what Pacioretty's been doing all year for this team. He gets an assist on Mark Stone's overtime winner. And I love the way he plays. I like the new transition to Max Pacioretty where he's become he's a really confident player. He looks just way happier as a person to be in Vegas and not face that scrutiny every day. And the interesting thing would be, if they win tonight, which I think they will, they'll play the Montreal Canadiens. And boy, wouldn't that be interesting? Him to play his old team, his old buddies, Gallagher, Weber, all these guys that he was teammates with, to go in and do battle with. That would be intriguing for me to see those two guys go head to head, see what they can do. But we'll see what that makes of. But I like Vegas tonight. I think they'll move on to the conference final. And for Colorado, find a way. McKinnon, this is your night. You haven't been that good in this series. Rantanen's better than you in this series. Brandon Saad's been finding ways to score goals in this series. He got 7 goals in the playoffs. This is a game for Nathan McKinnon to step up. If you're the superstar talent, if you're the guy that can be a superstar and push a team over the top, then win tonight. Going on the road to that sold-out crowd at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas and get the win. Because this is what you were drafted to do. This is what you're a superstar. You built a team. You're saving money on the cap because you're taking less money at $6 million. Well, win. Vegas is cash strapped. They loaded up with Alex Pietrangelo in the offseason. They don't have any salary cap flexibility. For Colorado, this is the team you wanted. You got Philip Grubauer. You don't got Michael Hutchinson like last year. Get your team over the hump. And I think this is a Nathan McKinnon night for me. Can he break through that defense? It's been a wall, and he hasn't been able to get around it so far. And you also got to look and say, if we can get through Vegas, we got Montreal on the other side. Now, is Montreal going to be a cakewalk? Hell no. I'm not going to be the one to say it's going to be a cakewalk because I know a lot of Leafs fans, and they were moonwalking after they're up 3-1. And since that time period, Montreal has not trailed in a hockey game. 7 complete games, they have not trailed. So am I just going to say Colorado's going to, walk all over the Montreal Canadiens or the Vegas Golden Knights? No, I'm not. Do I favor Vegas? Would I favor Colorado? You bet. But it's not going to be, redheaded stepchild type series. We just walk in there, you beat the kid and leave. That's not the way it's going to be. It's not, that's not how it's going to look here. So I still think those teams are confident saying, okay, well, we got Montreal. It's not, we don't got to play Tampa. We will deal with Tampa in the final. But we got Montreal in front of us. We'll take that. It could have been a lot worse. Well, it could have been Toronto, but I think they would have been pretty confident with that matchup too. But we got the Canadian. We're lucky. We got the Canadian division upcoming. Let's go fucking waste them once and for all. So I think there's some added motivation there, saying we can take care of business here. But Colorado at Vegas tonight, Game 6. Loaded T-Mobile Arena, should be a packed crowd. And it could either be Colorado forcing a game 7 on Saturday night, or Vegas getting a win and preparing to face Montreal. And obviously NHL will have to schedule the conference finals upcoming, likely to start Saturday night. I would suspect if that series ends tonight. So looking forward to that for sure. So that's really the hockey update. Really some good hockey, and I suspect we'll see another good game tonight between two really good teams in Colorado and the Vegas Golden Knights. The French Open. I've been talking about that recently and how it's really interesting. And we've seen 17-year-old Coco Gauff. She makes the quarterfinals at the French. She loses yesterday morning. Really an easy defeat for her. A tough loss. She gets to a tiebreaker in the first set, but she loses that and then falls apart in the second set, losing 6-2. Serena Williams was bounced. We've seen Elena Svitolina get bounced at world number 5. Ash Barty was out in the second round. And it was just upset after upset. Bianca Andreescu, the number 6 seed, loses in the first round. And you look at the draw and how it's shaken up. Vika Azarenka loses to Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova. Pavlyuchenkova wins her quarterfinal matchup against Rybakina. She is now in the semifinal, and she was in a quarterfinal at the French 10 years ago. Did not make the semi, but 10 years ago she was in the quarterfinal of the French Open. She's here again. The number 31 seed, that's the last seed you can get as a tennis player. It goes from 1 to 31, and after that you're just a name. Pavlyuchenkova just made that list. She's here at semifinal. She'll be playing tomorrow. I was playing this morning, in about 20, 25 minutes against Tamara Zidansek. Now, Zidansek beat Bianca Andreescu, the Canadian woman, in the first round. So she's gone through the entire tournament, beating player after player. A few seeds in there, but it doesn't matter. She's gotten here. She's never been to a semifinal. Neither has Pavlyuchenkova. Pavlyuchenkova's been on tour for 12 years. Zidansek is a younger person, only 3 years on tour. But great opportunity for both women. And you think, well, one of these unranked women will get to the final and have to play a juggernaut. It's not that way. The other semifinal matchup is Barbora Krejcikova from the Czech Republic, who again never been to a major semifinal, is unranked, is a qualifier in this tournament, but has found a way into the semifinal just through the draw, has gotten to this point. Credit to her. She's facing Maria Sakkari, the highest seed remaining at 17. Sakkari had some big wins. She beat Petra Kvitova. Yesterday she beat Iga Swiatek, the defending champion. But again, she's never been to a major semifinal. So she'd be a slight favorite because she's a seed, but all these women don't know the feeling of being in a major semifinal and the pressure that comes with it. It'll be who can handle it the best. Who can overcome the fears, overcome the butterflies in your belly, and just play tennis, play your game. And we'll see who can do that the most effective today. But what's great about this for tennis, for women's tennis is so unpredictable. For about a 10, 15-year run, you knew Serena Williams was going to be in the semifinal of a major, and you knew likely she was going to win it. She's won 23 of them. And it creates a bit of, am I really going to tune in? Serena's going to win. If you're a Serena Williams fan, if you're an American, you're like, well, of course, Serena, she's winning for our country. She's dominating. I love Serena Williams, Nike, yada, yada, yada. Now I love Serena Williams too. I think she's one of the greatest athletes of all time. But it does create a bit of boredom because you're like, well, can we see somebody else win? When Maria Sharapova stunned Serena Williams and won at Wimbledon when she was 19 years old, that was a big moment. You're like, well, maybe Maria can be a person that can test Serena. They played another, I think, 23 times. Maria never won again. She won one matchup against Serena Williams her entire life. It was that Wimbledon final. But they played many more Grand Slam finals. Serena never gave her a chance. She dominated that matchup. And, forever you wanted somebody to challenge Serena. Well, she just got old. Nobody could really challenge her. fought Mother Time, is defeating Serena Williams. She's just getting a little older. And we see it with Roger Federer with Father Time defeating him. But with Serena moving on, what I think is great is that there's not one woman that's just dominating the sport. Ash Barty is a great player. I'm sure Canadians hope Bianca Andreescu was going to take that next step. She's injured. She's inconsistent. Who the hell knows? She's had her problems. She hasn't. Sofia Kenin wins the Australian Open as a youngster. She gets to a round of 16 here. But again, she's not dominating the sport. Sabalenka looked like I thought she should win this tournament. She gets bounced early by Pavlyuchenkova. So it's just the unpredictability of who's going to win. Naomi Osaka is the best women's tennis player in the world, but she withdrew because of her mental health issues. But again, she's not winning every major. It's just seeing tennis player names that you don't expect. And you're like, well, I guess Swiatek was not a favorite to win this tournament last year, but she did. The year before that, 17-year-old Yelena Ostapenko won the French Open title as a qualifier. That's good for the sport. It's just fresh blood all the time. And you could say, well, it's not that good for marketing because you don't know who these players are. But sometimes an underdog story is a better sell than the old dog, getting home to drink again. Like seeing Rafael Nadal raise the Roland Garros trophy. Yeah, you feel it's got a good feeling for a minute, but at the end of it, you're like, well, I just watched this 2-week tournament and I knew who was going to win before it started. That's not that entertaining. Not that many people want to tune into that. You like to say, well, I hope there's some unpredictability here. And of course, you still respect Rafael Nadal winning 13 French Open titles so far. And I'd be shocked if he doesn't win his 14th this weekend. But it's also like, could we see somebody else raise it? Could we see a player actually test Nadal? Like Nadal went 4 sets yesterday, and it's almost like, Diego Schwartzman deserves a medal. He wins the second set 6-4, then he loses 6-3, 6-0. Ass kicking after that. Winning a set against Nadal in Paris is like winning a major. And I like that women's tennis has this unpredictability. You have 4 women that have never been. One of these women is going to win a Grand Slam. They may never get back to a semifinal. Yelena Ostapenko won the French Open. I mentioned she won the French Open title. She's never been to another quarterfinal at a major, including the French. She was out in the first round this year. Maybe it's a one-hit wonder. Bianca won the U.S. Open. She's been injured ever since. We haven't seen her play consistently. She was out in the first round. Simona Halep won Wimbledon 2019 against Serena Williams. Since then, she's had some injury problems and lost a lot of early round matches at majors and big tournaments. Is that her ceiling as a player? Did she hit her peak and it kind of deflated that and she's no longer this great player? It's just the unknown of the women's tennis game and who's going to be there that I think makes it really compelling. And if you're a tennis fan, you're like, I just tuned in for the semifinal and the championship. This morning, yeah, it's not that sexy because you're like, who the hell is this? Who's Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova? Who is this woman? I don't know. But at the same time, if you're just a fan of sports, you like to see unpredictability. The New York Islanders are the Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova of the NHL. Because a lot of people say they're so boring and they're not, you don't want to watch them. They play that style. I don't give a crap what your style is. If you win, you win. You deserve to be there. And Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova got through her draw and she's here. And to me, she's likely the favorite to win the title now as a 31 seed. And, it's crazy to think about, but it's also great. I like to see that. So we'll see what happens this weekend. We get the semifinals for the women this morning. Tomorrow morning will be the semifinals for the men's matchups. And 2 very different matchups where you got world number 6, Stefanos Tsitsipas will take on world number 5, Alexander Zverev in the first semifinal. Tsitsipas has never been to a major semifinal. He's been a player that's been on the rise, winning a lot of Master 1000s events, competing, being one of the more consistent players on tour this year. And he's going up against Alexander Zverev, who he's really changed his game since reaching the final at the U.S. Open, where he lost to Dominic Thiem in a fifth set tiebreak, just a really deflating loss, but a breakthrough for him. He seemed to have a new composure, a new confidence, a new swagger about him, where he's taking tennis more seriously. Before he did these stupid antics where he'd lose the first set and he would just give up, and he'd lose the next two sets, just hitting unforced errors everywhere, smashing his racket. He's more cool, calm, and collective. He's dropped one set so far in this tournament. He looks really comfortable, really confident out there, and he just looks like a different person. And 2 weeks ago in Madrid, he beat Rafael Nadal. He went on to win that tournament, but in the process, he beat Rafael Nadal, won the event. It's a clay event, and he's beaten Nadal twice over the last 2 years on clay. That's an impressive stat. Obviously, never at Roland Garros, but I look at this matchup and I think both men have played really well. Tsitsipas has dropped a few more sets. He dropped a set in the third round to Big John Isner. He dropped, but in the quarterfinal, they both won in straight sets. So they're coming in fresh for this matchup. They have both of them playing Tuesday, ending their matches quickly. They won't play again until Friday. So they'll both be fresh. But I do like Zverev a tad bit more than Tsitsipas. I think Zverev is he's a confident guy. I think he wants Nadal in that final. He beat him in Madrid. The next week in Barcelona, Nadal beat him there in straight sets. I think he wants to try to slay the dragon. I think he believes he can. He beat him on clay not too long ago. And using that confidence coming in, not being, you see some guys face Nadal and it's over before it starts. I think yesterday, Diego Schwartzman, he won that second set. He got broken in the third set and it was over from there. He won 2 more games the rest of the match. And, before he knew it, he's packing his bags going home to Argentina. And that, I don't think Zverev, he used to have that mindset. I don't think he does anymore. I think we'll tell early in the matchup, but that should be a great semifinal. And then the other semifinal, you got the two veterans. They faced at Roland Garros 4 different times. It's gone to 5 sets 3 times, but Djokovic has never been able to win. He's battled Nadal, to the bitter end, but he's never been able to beat him. He's never beaten him at Roland Garros. He won the one tournament he won at the French was when Stan Wawrinka beat Nadal in the quarterfinal. He went on to beat Stan in the French Open final. That he's gonna have to finally slay the dragon if he wants to win this tournament again. And you look at Djokovic, you got to feel confident. You say, if I can beat Nadal, the best clay court tennis player that there ever will be, then I have 2 guys that have never won a major waiting for me. And I feel confident against either of them. I've beaten them both multiple times. Doesn't matter what surface. If you're Novak Djokovic, you think you're the best tennis player that's ever been. So it doesn't matter who's waiting. It could be Roger Federer. It does not matter. But for Djokovic, I think the key for him is win the first set. You need to get a lead, and because you're not going to sweep Nadal 3 straight sets, but win that first set, get some confidence, and start playing with it. And if you go down a set or 2 to Nadal, you're chasing it. He's gonna, even if you win the third, push it to 4, he's gonna have more in the tank than you because he just finds a way. He knows how the ball bounces there. He knows exactly how to play it, and he'll get more break points, and he'll finally break through on your serve, and the match is over before you know it. For Djokovic, one of the key things for him more is return of serve. Make it difficult. Make Nadal play balls. Do not hit them. Don't make it unreturnable. Put it in play and get rallies going and hope that you can hit some big shots, because giving Nadal easy points on his serve is a killer, because he on clay, it's hard to argue he's not one of the best returners because he just knows where the serve's going to go. And before you know it, you're in a long rally and he's got a few break points in your serve, and then you're in trouble. So make life as difficult as it can be for Nadal, because he's going to do the same for you on your serve. And him being a better clay court tennis player than anybody, he's going to have the upper hand in the longer rallies. And for Djokovic, your serve's got to be going tomorrow. Hit some aces. Make life easier on yourself so that you don't have to go into 20, 24-point rallies with Nadal, where he's going to know where to place the ball time in and time out. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, when these two players meet, it's always a great matchup. And French Open's coming to an end, but we got Wimbledon in about 3 weeks. So it's not a long break between majors, but it should be a great weekend of tennis for sure when it comes to obviously the finals and the semifinals for both the men and women over the next 2 days. The NBA world. The Phoenix Suns are a really interesting team to me because they have Chris Paul. And Chris Paul forever was a great player that could never get a team over the hump. He was in New Orleans to start his career. They got to a conference final, never could get there. He moves on to LA where they got, Lob City with him and Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan. They get to a second round at one point, a second round multiple times, but, they couldn't win. Chris Paul moves on. Then he goes to Houston where he's with James Harden. They get to a conference final again. And they're up 3-2 against the Golden State Warriors. And in Game 5, what happens? But Chris Paul gets injured. He can't play in Game 6 and 7. And the Houston Rockets lose that series to Golden State. Eventually, they break that up, and Chris Paul ends up in OKC. And last year, he does some great things. He gets OKC to make the playoffs after nobody saw that coming. But nevertheless, he's had a long career of being one of the great point guards in NBA history, but he's never reached an NBA final. He's never won a championship, and it's clearly missing from his resume. But this year he gets moved from OKC because they want to rebuild, and they send him to Phoenix. And again, he's with a young team. He's with young guard Devin Booker, who's looking like a star. Former first overall pick DeAndre Ayton at center, who's been good but not great so far in his career. With Miles Bridges, who's a good player. And they say, Chris, can you go in there and just be the glue to hold us together? And what does he do? He leads the team to the second best record in the NBA behind the Utah Jazz, finishing just a game behind them. I think he should have been nominated for the MVP. I would have elevated him above Steph Curry, above Joel Embiid, and put Jokic, Curry, and Chris Paul. But nevertheless, he had a great year, and that team gets to the second seed. He gets injured in the first round, but he battles through. They beat the Lakers, a huge win, and now they head into a series to face the Denver Nuggets. And Denver's been to the conference finals the last 2 years. They're a really consistent team. They're good. Jokic, the MVP this year, but they don't have Jamal Murray. And Chris can smell blood in the water. He's like a shark. He says, they don't got Jamal Murray. They're a good team, but they're not great. We can win here. Utah and the Clippers on the other side, we're not going to be scared of them. We beat LeBron. We beat the Lakers. We've beaten the team that nobody wanted to face. We've already done that. And last night, he had his shoulder injuries. He's not 100%, but this guy's just a battler. He's not going to quit on plays. And what does he do last night? He gets 15 assists. 15 assists in a 25-point win. And that's just Chris Paul. 17 points, 15 assists in only 31 minutes. That's incredible. And through the first 2 games, their leading scorer in game 1 was 20 points. Last night it was 18 because they're just getting contributions throughout the lineup. Look, their starting lineup. Let's run through it on the box score. Miles Bridges, 16 points. Drake Crowder, 11. DeAndre Ayton, 15 points, 10 assists in 26 minutes. Devin Booker, 18 points, 10 rebounds. Chris Paul, 17 points, 15 assists. Torrey Craig, 10 points in 15 minutes off the bench. Dario Saric, 8 points in 16 minutes. I can go on. But nobody's been a superstar in these 2 games, but they just get balanced scoring. And you look at the other side, Nikola Jokic gets 24 points, 13 rebounds, 6 assists. But after that, Michael Porter Jr. scores 11. Aaron Gordon scored 6 last night, only 1 rebound. Austin Rivers had 6 points. Campazzo had 6. That's their starting lineup. You're not going to win. They get blown out by 25, and you head back home to Denver. They're a great home team, but the Suns are just playing complementary basketball. Where is Devin Booker a superstar? Yeah, I think he is. Is Chris Paul going to be a Hall of Fame point guard? You bet. But it's about distributing. He's distributing to everybody. people are making their shots. DeAndre Ayton has played Jokic really well so far in the series. Jokic had points last night, but it was really in mop-up duty where the game was over. He's getting 15 and 10 for DeAndre Ayton. That's all you need. You don't need to get 20 and 10 right now. If it gets to a point where Jokic is dominating, then yeah, you're going to have to step up your play. But the Phoenix Suns are just – this team hadn't made the playoffs in 11 years, and they're up 2-0 with, great probability of going to a conference final this year. And for Chris Paul, nobody wants a championship more than him. He's 36. He's with a team that can win finally. And there's not that many chances left. And how much time is he going to be able to play at a high level or get to another playoffs and is he injured? Because that's happened many times for him. And I just give credit to the Phoenix Suns. Monty Williams winning Coach of the Year. Associated Press Coach of the Year. Tom Thibodeau won the Coach of the Year voted by the NBA. But he looks like this team just looks like the real deal. They buy in. They love each other. And we'll see what Denver can do heading home. Game 3 will be Friday night in Denver. But, they're going to need to find their game because the first two, they have it hasn't been that close. Phoenix has been able to rest guys. Ayton only played 26 minutes last night. Chris Paul only played 30. So they're going to be fresh heading into Denver. Well, I'm sure Monty Williams telling them, let's put a dagger in their neck. Let's get some, let's take a rest. Let's get some time to sit back and watch because I think the Jazz and the Clippers, it's going to be a longer series going 6 or 7. So they'll get some time to sit there and wait. Jazz and Clippers game 2 tonight. That's an 11 o'clock start with the Jazz winning game 1, 112-109 behind Donovan Mitchell's 45 points. Incredible game for him. But Kawhi Leonard played okay, but they're coming off a 7-game series. You're going to have to see more from Paul George. He calls himself playoff P. He's going to have to be better. Marcus Morris Sr., Reggie Jackson contribute more offensively. But we'll see what happens. But the big matchup tonight is the Brooklyn Nets at the Milwaukee Bucks. The first 2 games, it has been really pathetic performances from the Milwaukee Bucks where James Harden gets hurt in the first 45 seconds of this series. He has not played another second. And they, at points in the fourth quarter the other night, they were down by as many as 49. That can't happen. Giannis just not playing the fourth quarter, basically being ineffective. They're building the wall. He can't get through it. And he's got his problems. They're saying you can't get the paint, so he's shooting threes. He's not a good three-point shooter. They need to run their offense through Jrue Holiday and hope to make some open shots. But they're not making threes. They're not making their free throws. Then you have Brooklyn, who's shooting 50% from the floor, 40% from 3, and 90% from the free throw line. That's pretty damn hard to beat. I mean, you got Kevin Durant, who's looks like the best player on the planet because he is. Kyrie Irving playing at a high level. Joe Harris, who's one of the most underrated three-point shooters in the game. What more could you ask from Brooklyn right now? And for Milwaukee, they're without a superstar in James Harden, and you lose by 40 points? That can't happen. And tonight, Milwaukee's at home. We're going to see exactly what they're made of tonight. Because I think if they lose tonight, the series is over. I think it's over already. But it's really over if you lose tonight. They'll get swept. But does Coach Budenholzer get fired? He was hired to win a championship. They got to a conference final against the Toronto Raptors. He was offered that Raptors job, by the way. They were up 2-0 in that series. Raptors win 4 in a row. Last year, they played the Miami Heat in the second round. The Miami Heat were not favored. The Miami Heat beat the Milwaukee Bucks in 5 games. Giannis played. You had your lineup. Milwaukee was first in the East. You lose to the 5th-seeded Miami Heat. And now this year, yes, Brooklyn's a higher seed. You could say they're a better team, but they're without James Harden. You're going to get swept where Brooklyn played the entire series without James Harden. It's putting the cart before the horse a little bit. But if you still lose this series in a decisive manner, what are you going to say? What's the excuse? So it's interesting to watch in Milwaukee. I wouldn't, a coaching change would not shock me because Giannis just re-upped. He re-upped there to win a championship. Thinking, okay, Milwaukee, they're a small market, but we're going to do enough to win. They acquired Drew Holiday. He re-signed. And it's easier to fire the coach than get rid of all the players. That's never going to change in pro sports. And so that's an 8:30 start tonight. We got Vegas, Colorado, 10 o'clock start tonight. And obviously some good, interesting baseball stories. And I will get back into baseball as we move forward here. But there's just a lot of playoff stuff going on. Obviously the Blue Jays got a win last night in the south side of Chicago. Alex Manoah looks like a pretty damn good starter for them. You're seeing the San Francisco Giants just continue to win. I'm just impressed with them as a team and what they've been able to do all year. The AL East, the Blue Jays, just an update. They're 6 games back of the Tampa Bay Rays. Then you got the Yankees 5.5 back, and the Red Sox a 1.5 back of the Tampa Bay Rays, who just continue to find a way to lead that division. They play consistently good baseball, losing last night in extras to the Nationals, but they win more often than they lose. And obviously the Jays are trying to track them right now and get back in the mix for the AL East race. So that's going to do it for today's podcast. Enjoy the games tonight. Obviously Game 6, Avs, Golden Knights. Got some good basketball, like I mentioned. French Open in the next couple of days. We got a UFC 263 this weekend, which I'll get into. I'm going to hope to do a podcast tomorrow night after work. So preview that, talk about the games, and preview the weekend of sports and what's upcoming. So as always, everybody take care, stay healthy, and we'll talk soon.